the Rise Up See Red podcast, all about the Arizona Cardinals and the NFL, featuring insider and outsider perspectives. Enjoy the best hour of Cardinals talk on the web. Now here are your hosts, Jess Root and Seth Cox.
Hello, Arizona Cardinals fans, and welcome to the latest edition of the Rise Up See Red podcast, the best hour of Cardinals talk on the web. I'm your host, Jess Root from CardsWire.com, the USA Today NFL Wire site covering the Arizona Cardinals. And this is one of the 14 2023 opponent previews. We are now into the NFC East as we do the final four. We started with the NFC West teams. We moved on to the last place schedule. Then moved on to the AFC North, and now we're in the last stretch with the NFC East. The Cardinals opened the season with 3 straight games against the division. The second, week 2, their home opener is against the New York Giants. And with me is from Giants Wire, one of the contributing writers, stepping in right now for managing editor Dan Benton, is John Fennely. John, welcome to the show. Nice to meet you. It's the first time I've ever met you.
Yeah, glad to be here.
And how's it like over in the, it's not, right now it's blazing where I live for different reasons. Out here, if you've ever wanted to know what it's like to walk outside and be in an oven, that's what it's like. It's dry, it's hot, but like any air, it just feels like if you opened your oven when it was fully heated and the air come out, that's how it feels like. But it's way different where y'all live.
Yeah, we have heat, 92 degrees. We have humidity. I think today was about 80%, which is just really disgusting. And we have bad air quality from fires coming down from Canada, smoke coming down from Canada. So the air quality wasn't as bad as it was a few weeks ago when we had orange skies, but it's still bad with the humidity and the fire smoke. It just hasn't been a good summer here.
No, I can't imagine. But the Giants did have a good season, relatively good season. I don't know if it was above expectations, but last year where they hired a new head coach, they made it to the playoffs, something that was surprising for most people. Some might think that maybe they overachieved, but with Brian Daboll in his head coach, he got the most out of that team. What can you tell us about that 2022 season? What was different than previous seasons?
Situational football was a lot better. Turnovers were down. Penalties were down. They need 3rd and 1. They get it. Staying out of 3rd and longs. Injuries. That was a killer the last 5 years. I mean, they led the league in injured players the last 5 years. So, Daniel Jones stepping up and playing much better than he had in his first couple of years. Not making the mistakes, throwing the ball away, living to play another day rather than throw an interception. And, the defense playing very well in situations. I mean, they were giving up a lot of yards, but they weren't giving up a lot of points.
Yeah.
And keeping the team in games. Very good red zone defense last year. So a lot of that changed. Daboll came in, put a little discipline down, got rid of the stupid football and bad habits that they had the last couple of years under Joe Judge and Pat Shurmur and Ben McAdoo. I mean, it was just a lot of disorganization there.
And not only did they make the playoffs, they did win their first playoff game, knocking off the Vikings in that first round, a team that I think won 13 or 14 games, and then got the doors blown out against the eventual NFC champs, the Eagles. But they that was, I mean, they did that to a lot of teams. So
the Eagles were very tough. They were a very tough out last year. Probably should have won the Super Bowl game, but didn't. And they'll be back with a different team, more powerful this year. But that's a conversation for another day.
You look at
how they managed to fit all those players back under the cap. I don't know how they did it, but they did it.
You look at a lot of the games that they won. They won a lot of close games. So they started the season a 1-point win over the Titans, a 3-point win over the Panthers. It was 8 points. It was a 1-score win over the Bears, 5-point win over the Packers, 4-point win over the Ravens, and 23-17 6-point win over the Jaguars to start 6-1. What was it about those close games? What was going right for them? You mentioned the situational football. Was it simply they weren't making the mistakes that they were previously?
Right. They weren't coughing the ball up. They weren't. In years past, they would turn the ball over in the fourth quarter once or twice to kill important drives. Then they'd give up a big play and lose the game by two scores, right? So that didn't happen last year. Wink Martindale is the new defensive coordinator, rather. He's got that bend but don't break in the fourth quarter. The Giants played very well in the red zone on defense. And the games came down to the wire, and they either scored last when they needed to, or they held the other team down. It all came down to the last 5 minutes of the game.
Daniel Jones, known for most of his career, is incredibly turnover prone. How did he turn around only 5 interceptions? That's incredibly low, 1.1% interception rate. Only 6 fumbles.
Right.
That after years of being perhaps one of the most injury or most turnover-prone quarterbacks in the league between the fumbles and the interceptions. His numbers definitely weren't eye-popping, over 3,200 yards, 15 touchdowns. But he did add,
on the ground, they were pretty well.
Yes, he added the element. He was always a mobile quarterback, but he actively was part of the run game this last year. 7 touchdowns, 708 yards, and then on top of that, Saquon Barkley. But was it just the fact that they protected, because he still was sacked 44 times? What did the offensive system protect him with his decision making more, or did he just start making better decisions?
Absolutely. It's all coaching. It's Dable, who had coached Josh Allen for 3 or 4 years, right? Then you had Mike Kafka, who was the offensive coordinator. He was Patrick Mahomes's quarterback coach in Kansas City for 3 or 4 years. So, you put those two minds together, you get a guy like Jones, they change his mindset, especially when it comes to turnovers, how to do the checkdowns, how to go through the progressions. He had to learn all that all over again. When he was a rookie under Pat Shermer, he pretty much had that down, because Pat Shermer's a very good quarterback coach also. But once Shermer left, Jones, was up to his own devices. He just fell off a cliff. But when these guys came to town, he was back on the horse, and I think he'll just get better. He doesn't run only out of necessity, unless they call a play. I mean, it's very rare that they'll do that now. And he protects the football better. He has to understand, you don't go for that extra yard. Go out of bounds. Don't protect the football, protect yourself. This way he doesn't get hurt. He doesn't lose the football.
Saquon Barkley had a fantastic year, over 1,300 yards. Add another 57 catches. Now, granted, his yards per catch was basically extension of the run game there. What were other high points or highlights or positives to last season's, and in addition to the improvement of Daniel Jones and just the massive production of Saquon Barkley? What were the other bright spots?
On offense, a much better play along the offensive line. New offensive line coach, Bobby Johnson, been around a long time in the league. He created a new attitude along that line. Andrew Thomas, Pro Bowl, All-Pro rather, left tackle. Very good play from the guards. Mark Lewinsky, who came over from the Colts, had a pretty solid year against for the run and the running game, not protecting the passer. The line still had problems protecting the passer, but the run game, they were very good. And that helps. When you have a guy like Barkley and you have backups like Matt Breida, you're able to, get, some 8-9 yard runs when you need them, control the line of scrimmage a little bit. And that's what they needed to do. They needed to take the pressure off Daniel Jones a little bit through the running game. And with Barkley coming back and being healthy, that helps, but the line being much better. And now they've made some more changes this year, and they'll be much improved on that line.
Despite one would say the overachieving, perhaps what expectations were. Were there any negatives to come out of? Were there any disappointments overall?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, at the wide receiver position, the amount of injuries and then the lack of production. Um, Darius Slayton was pretty much in the doghouse for most of the year, and he had been their top receiver the last couple of years. But Sterling Shepard went down. Wan'Dale Robinson went down. Um, they had to sign Isaiah Hodgins off the street. He had played in Buffalo for Dable, and he turned out to be a pleasant surprise, but only the last month of the season. The fact that they didn't have, solid wide receiver play the whole year, and to be fair, they don't throw the ball down the field that often. And that's why Jones's numbers, he only had 3,200 yards passing. He's throwing 8-yard passes. You're not going to get too many yards doing that, but they needed an upgraded wide receiver, and they did that in the offseason. They drafted one and they signed 2 others, so we'll see how it works out.
All right. Let's move on to that. Coming to next on the Rise Up See Red podcast, the Best of Cardinals Talk. Let's talk about the offseason, go over free agency, the Saquon Barkley situation, and the NFL draft. That's coming up next on Rise Up See Red. We're back on the Rise Up See Red podcast, the Best of Cardinals Talk on the web. Free agency. The biggest story is that of Saquon Barkley. What has been the situation with Saquon and money? And every year we talk about how great running backs aren't appreciated, but then every time they get a big contract, they get hurt.
Mm. Yeah, that happens, and the running back market kind of the bottom fell out of it in this offseason. I'm sure you guys know that. Dalvin Cook lost his job, and he still hasn't been re-signed, right? Kareem Hunt still not signed. These are solid players, could help any team. With Barkley, he got the franchise tag. I think it's $10.1 million guaranteed for the 1 year. The Giants did not move off that number, and today he's going to have to play for that tag. They didn't sign him to a long-term deal. Today was the deadline. So what will happen is Barkley has very few options. Either play and get paid at 10-1 or sit and get paid nothing, right?
Yeah.
That's it. And he has until week 10 to do that. But every week he misses, he doesn't get paid.
Correct.
He deduct his salary by that's game check, which is like $600,000. So he doesn't really benefit by sitting out.
Yeah, so he comes back, obviously. We'll have to wait and see if he plays. Were there any impact losses in free agency?
This year on offense, no. On defense, I would say they didn't make an offer, or didn't make a big enough offer to the safety Julian Love, and he ended up signing with Seattle, which ends up to being a good fit for him. Yeah, he was seen as an ascending player. He was a jack of all trades in the beginning when they drafted him out of Notre Dame. Played a little slot corner, played a little corner, a little safety, a little nickel. And last year they made him a safety, and he led the team in tackles. But he became a free agent, and they just didn't have him in their plans for some reason. That was a little disappointing to a lot of Giant fans. A lot of people would like to see him back, especially since the other safety, Xavier McKinney, broke his hand in an off-field accident and cost him 7 games. And his hand is still not 100%. So I think that's a little bit of a concern. They do have new players in there. They did sign a free agent, Bobby McCain, who played with Washington. They have Dane Belton, who they drafted out of Iowa last year. And they also drafted a kid out of Houston this year, Javarius Owens, who they like a lot. So we'll see. And they like this kid they got from the Jets, Jason Pinnock, who they signed last year as a free agent. So we'll see how it works out. But Love was a proven commodity, and a lot of Giant fans wish they would have kept him.
On the acquisition side of things, not a ton of moves. But it looks like there's some impact ones, well, potentially impact ones. The biggest move would have to be the addition of Paris Campbell, wouldn't you say?
Well, the trade for Darren Waller was the big move. That was the big move of the offseason for the Giants. They traded the third-round pick they got from the Chiefs in exchange for Kadarius Toney to get Waller. Waller, has been injured he's been in and out of action the last 2 years, and hasn't been a Pro Bowler for a few years now. But he's healthy again, and the Giants are hoping that they can get him back into Pro Bowl form. For a third-round pick, it's worth it.
Then you also add the names on there that probably on the smaller end of things. A'Shawn Robinson should be a nice addition on the defensive interior.
That's a big help to the Giants.
They expect pairing him with Dexter Lawrence will be very nice.
Yeah, and they have Leonard Williams in there. They got a guy they call Nacho from Tampa Bay, Raheem
Nunez Roche.
That's his name. I'm sorry, I keep forgetting his name, but very good against the run. They drafted a kid, Jordan Riley, out of Oregon. They had a kid from Oregon last year, got hurt, DJ Davidson. So their front line, they're going to have a nice little rotation there.
Cornerback, they added Amani Arourier. What do you think of that move? He's been pretty good, and it's also been bad some too as well.
Loved him coming out of the draft out of Penn State, but then his pro career is like a seesaw. It's up and down, like you said. Hopefully they can make something out of him. The first-round pick, Deonte Banks, will probably start along with Adoree Jackson. So I don't know where he's going to fit in, probably as a backup, a nickel, or whatever. But they need talent and depth in the secondary. They were signing anybody they could find.
Which brings us to the NFL draft. You already mentioned Deonte Banks, extremely athletic cornerback out of Maryland. He was one of the stars of the combine. But not only that, you managed to pick up Minnesota center John Michael Schmitz. Many consider him a potentially great center prospect. In fact, when I did my mock draft on this show, we had him going in the first round. I had the Giants taking him in round 1. And are those the two players is Schmitz probably going to start as a rookie?
No, he's there. Yeah, he's already there. So is Banks. They're both going to start. I mean, it's their positions to lose. That's the word going into camp. So, Schmitz, this is what the Giants have needed, a center, a franchise center. They needed that for a decade. They've got it. Hopefully he can bring the line together. They have pretty good guard play. Evan Neal, who was their first-round pick last year out of Alabama as a right tackle. They're hoping he can make the same kind of jump in year 2 that Andrew Thomas did 2 years ago. So the offensive line with Schmitz, they're counting on him to do a lot, to bring it all together. And it looks like he's the kind of guy, he's a tough guy. He's the kind of guy that can do it. He's an old giant, we used to call the suburbanites. Bill Parcells used to call the guys the suburbanites because they used to drive up to the stadium and practice in, what do you call it, SUVs with car seats in the back. He said, you guys don't look like football players. You look like soccer moms.
Round 3, you pick up Tennessee wide receiver Jalen Hyatt. No fourth-round pick. Round 5, Oklahoma running back Eric Gray. Trey Hawkins out of Old Dominion, round 6. Jordan Riley, defensive tackle, Oregon, in round 7. You already mentioned Javarius Owens out of Houston, a safety. So we already know Banks and Schmitz, starters, no question. Which of those guys on the rest of the draft class could have decent roles as rookies this coming season?
Well, Hyatt hopefully will have a role. I mean, the Giants have a lot of guys. They have Paris Campbell. They have Wandale Robinson, and now they have Hyatt. They still have Sterling Shepard, Darius Slayton. So, they do have a lot of options. Who's the number one? There really isn't a number one. And they're hoping that Hyatt could be a deep threat for them. But, we'll see. They haven't practiced yet. We haven't seen anybody do anything. So it's hard to tell. But Hyatt looks like he's the goods. He did have that 5-touchdown game against Alabama. when he was at Tennessee, and hopefully he can become a good pro. I think that a lot of people think that he was a steal in round 3. The Giants traded up. That's why they didn't have a 4th round pick. They traded up to get him. So that's that's a gamble, but he's the kind of player that if he hits, he hits.
Yeah. Well, and yeah, he's a guy that, especially when it's in a position of need,
right,
makes a lot of sense. Beyond Hyatt, do any of the rest of the guys figure to have any sort of role this coming season, or are they more down the line guys?
Well, with Barkley, possibly he's probably not going to come to camp. He would have to sign his franchise. He's got to sign it anyway when you think about it. But when he signs and comes in, they probably won't play him in the preseason. They'll play Eric Ray, and they really like him. Oklahoma has a good track record of producing running backs, as we all know. So they really like his game, and they may be grooming him for a possible replacement for Barkley if he does not play well this year. So if Barkley doesn't play well, they probably won't franchise tag him, and they'll let him become a free agent, and then Eric Ray will have the job.
Not a bad way to run. As long as you're getting decent, productive backs, that's kind of the philosophy to use. Use them up, move on.
Running back by committee, if you look at all the top teams, Kansas City, Philadelphia, Buffalo, this is the way they roll. They use 3 or 4 guys.
Coming up next on the Rise Up See Red podcast, best of Cardinals talk on the web. Let's move ahead to 2023. What is expected out of the Giants this coming season? That's coming next on Rise Up See Red. We're back on the Rise Up See Red podcast, best of Cardinals talk on the web. They are coming off of a 9-7-1 season in which they won a playoff game. What is expected of the Giants in 2023? Playing in a tough NFC East, we will say that. You've got the Philadelphia Eagles still looking like champions, or looking they can compete. You've got the Cowboys, who have continued to be pretty solid teams, and then Washington, which isn't good, but is never bad. Under Ron Rivera's teams are never bad. They're always just right there, tough, and never can we get past 8 or 9 wins.
Right. They're very competitive, Washington, and they're going to go with a unproven quarterback in Sam Howell this year. Anybody who's followed Sam Howell knows that he's a very capable player, but, making the jump to the NFL. He didn't have many reps last year as far as I saw. But
No. The one thing about Howell for me is when I remember seeing him in the Senior Bowl, I think it was, he's going to get hurt because he plays. He's not that big, and he plays like you need to make plays, but he's going to sacrifice his body once or twice too many times. It's probably going to cost him games. That's my opinion, because that's what I remember seeing at the Senior Bowl when he took off and he was productive, but you're like, oh, he's going to take some hits.
Yeah, that's the one thing I think with Washington, and as Giant fans, they're not really too concerned about the problems of the other 3 teams. After the last 5 seasons where we lost double-digit games every year, not really too sympathetic about the woes of the Cowboys, Eagles, and Commanders.
Right.
So what's expected of the Giants, naturally the bar is going to be much higher. They're going to have a tougher schedule. They went from having one of the easiest to one of the hardest. They're playing some really tough teams. They're doing a lot of traveling, a lot of cross-country. Many, many night games, many, many featured games on Fox and Amazon and so forth. They don't have to go overseas this year, but there's still a lot of travel. And, that's going to take its toll. That always does. I mean, you guys, the West Coast teams that have to come east.
Yeah.
You guys know what that's like.
Correct.
Because it's so spread out there. If the Seahawks especially always lead the league in miles traveled.
It's hard not to when you live up in,
right.
the way up in the Pacific Northwest. Right. Is there any fear that what they did last year was better than what they're going to be because they had so many things go right for them that there is a fear of sort of the regression toward the mean and those things that normally are 50-50, but we're going the Giants' way, will not go their way this year?
Well, you can't, the football's shaped a certain way, so when it hits the ground, you don't know which way it's going to bounce.
Yeah.
So you can't predict that. You're gonna lose some close games. You're gonna win some close games. But this year, probably looking at the same type of record if everything goes right again, because they really have some tough games in there.
Yeah. So if you're talking number of wins, what's probably their reasonable ceiling, and are you probably looking at maybe 10, 11 wins as a ceiling, and maybe if everything go well, making it to the NFC Championship game, depending on how the seeding works?
No, I don't think they're going to win that many games. I think the over-under, I think, is 7 for them in Vegas. So
do you still like the over for that number?
I think they can do 9, 9 and 8, right?
Yeah. Do you think they're a playoff team again this year? I
think they can make the playoffs again. 9 and 8 could probably get you there.
And what do you feel that they're like? I'm going to exclude major injury, but if things don't go well, what is their probable floor this year?
I would say 6. Excuse me, 6.
So
yeah, it's
sort of a 6 to 10 or 11 best case.
Yeah, that's the range you're looking at.
Yeah, and how do Giants fans perceive the Cardinals? The Cardinals are perceived mostly as a terrible team, but as you look at that Week 2 game on the road, it is the Cardinals' home opener, so they're naturally, in terms, for me, when I do betting stuff, on the home openers, I always give a little extra juice to the home team because it's their first game at home to get the fans.
I think that's week. Oh, it's week
2.
Week 3 or
it is
September 17th.
That's week 2. The Cardinals open.
Week 2, you're right.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm sorry.
The Cardinals open in Washington.
Yes.
Host the Giants in week 2, and then host the Cowboys in week 3. We play 3 of the 4 NFC East teams. It's like we're back in the NFC East 30 years ago.
You're running the gamut.
Do Giants fans expect to win? Not only expect to win against the Cardinals, expect a win, a convincing win, just expect to win, or do they feel that that's a game that will be tougher than advertised?
Wow. At this point in time, I don't know if Kyler Murray is going to play.
Not likely in week 2. He'd like to, but I doubt it.
Okay, so who will play quarterback is the
probably
question.
Colt McCoy.
McCoy, who was here for the Giants. And he's a gamer. I mean, he can move the team. But, the Cardinals aren't seen as a team that's going to win many more games than they won last year, which I think was 4, right?
Yeah, they won 4. The projected win total is 4.5. So
I don't know if this will be one of them, especially if they don't have strong quarterback play. They're not going to win. The Giants will win that game. Good quarterbacks will beat the Giants. But, because they can figure
Colt McCoy is a nice quarterback, but we know he's not a good quarterback. He's good enough.
Giants have issues with guys like Hurts and Prescott, and, Matthew Stafford and guys like that. Kirk Cousins they could beat. We've seen that. But, that's, Kirk Cousins is Kirk Cousins. So.
Kirk Cousins, it's amazing watching Kirk Cousins play. You look at his numbers like, he's got to be good, right? Then you watch him play, and you're like, wait, is he good? I can't tell.
Yeah, he just doesn't make the play when he needs to make it, seems, right?
Yeah.
Well, but, the Cardinals, getting back to them, they seem to be like a mess right now.
They're moving in the right direction.
They had a decent draft from what I could see. They still have some good players on their roster on the defensive side, mainly, right?
They've got very good safeties, and then everyone in front of them is mid at best. Basically, there's some potential. Yeah. There's a little potential there, but in terms of proven production, Budda Baker, Jalen Thompson, that's it on defense. The defensive line, their best defensive lineman, their most proven defensive lineman is Carlos Watkins, a guy that if you know who he is, congrats. He's not a household name by any means. He's a journeyman at best. On offenses where they have talent, and once Kyler comes back, the offense can probably carry the team a little bit. James Conner running back, you've got Hollywood Brown, you've got Zach Ertz at tight end. The offensive line is improved, but when Colt McCoy's playing, they have to be on schedule, and they can't fall behind because that Colt can't do that.
Yeah. Well, that's the big question. If even if Murray can play, I mean, and Murray has been erratic. You know that more than I do. If you play fantasy football, you play Murray, it's boom or bust. And it's been a lot of bust.
This last year, indeed, it definitely was. All right, John. John Fennely from Giants Wire, one of our sister sites on the NFL Wire, filling in for Dan Benton these days. John, aside from the site there, is there any other content that you have out there, social media ways that are my listeners, if they're looking for Giants content, can find you?
Oh, yeah. My Twitter handle is at John Fennely, but it says Fennely on football. I have a newsletter, a betting newsletter I send out during the season only. Betting and fantasy, which my picks do very well. I just want to let people know that. Probably better than a lot of these so-called expert touts that you see. I've been doing this a long time. I've been watching the NFL since, I guess, the first Super Bowl.
Wow.
So I've seen every Super Bowl. There was a stretch during Super Bowls where I won 22 in a row.
Ooh. With
the spread. And I was pretty hot there for a while. And last year I did very well. So I'll put it to you this way. I don't really work for a living anymore because I can win in fantasy and betting NFL. Summers I take off.
That's not a bad gig.
I don't have a day job.
Nice job
to let everybody know that.
So for you degenerates out there listening to my show, you get what Seth and I talk about. Fennely on football. It might be a follow that you want to make. Find him on Twitter. Sign up for his newsletter. John, appreciate the time. Thank you so much. That'll wrap up this edition of the Rise Up C-Red podcast, the best hour of Cardinals talk on the web. Unless this is the last show released, we've got another NFC East opponent coming tomorrow. Thanks for listening as always. Thank you, John, for your time. We'll talk again. Thanks for listening, everyone.
Okay.
Thanks for listening to the latest edition of the Rise Up C-Red podcast. Listen to previous episodes and subscribe to the show on Apple Podcasts, Stitcher Radio, Audioboom, or many other podcast platforms so shows are delivered directly to your mobile device. Please give the show a 5-star rating and always support the sponsors who support the show. We'll be back soon for the best hour of Cardinals talk on the web. Rise up, Red Sea, be Red, Sea Red, and of course, Rise up, Sea Red.